Bro, we finally made it. We could sell presets. Come on.
A real artist doesn't sell their presets.
We're gonna be rolling in the dough pretty soon.
Who cares about the money? It's all for the art. Duh.
I mean, we're pretty much an influencer now, right? Swipe up.
Part of the artist's journey is to suffer. So others can suffer by making their own presets.
We're like this close away from a Squarespace sponsorship.
You're just becoming a sellout.
Bro, you gotta go get that bag, man. Come on.
I'm gonna hate myself for doing this stuff. This is probably just so cringe. Okay, jokes aside, I have been asked if I'm gonna sell my presets. And these are the kind of like two personalities that I feel like you hear most of the time. Either, dude, just go get that money, get that bag, and sell presets. Or the other side is like the pretentious artist who is like, no, never sell presets, never tell anyone your secrets, remain this artist type. The reality, I think, is somewhere in the middle. For me, my stance after thinking about this for a long time is that if I can help people get a jump start into creating art for themselves, expressing themselves and what it is that they have on their heart out into the world to potentially change and impact other people, I mean, that's a fantastic thing. That is how creativity should be. We should be inspiring others. If a preset helps you to learn how to edit a little bit better, that is how I think that you should use it. Should you blatantly copy another photographer's work? No. The fact of the matter is that I want to take you into my kind of thought process when I'm editing photos for portrait sessions, for weddings, or whatever it might be. And let's just make a preset together right now. If you like that, if you want to support me, as far as my business, as far as my art, and me making videos like this, then by all means, please go. I was on a roll, man. That was good. Then if you like that and you want to support me, which I would be totally grateful for, then you can go and purchase my other presets that I have. But use those as a base to build your own art, to build your own style off of, and then work from there. Okay, I think that's enough like meta talk about presets. Let's jump into Lightroom and go from there. First things first, this exposure, texture, clarity, vibrance, saturation panel. This is kind of like, I think of this as brightness, obviously exposure, contrast, and then this area, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, is kind of where you're gonna expand your dynamic range in an image. So just depending on the image, you're gonna make the adjustments necessary there. These settings will probably be specific to each image that you edit, or you may need to tweak them. A common, I guess, template that you could say, or formula that a lot of people use is gonna be highlights down a little bit, shadows up a little bit, whites down, blacks up. So that just kind of expands the dynamic range of the image. You're trying to get the most dynamic range that you can out of it. So if I reset completely, you can kind of see that it definitely has changed the image, but I kind of like this pop more that's already there. But anyways, it's kind of a standard, like I'm gonna increase the amount of dynamic range that I have in there. Really, the first things that stick out to me is gonna be the crop. So I need to straighten this. So I kind of line it up with her head. That should be straight up and down. And I think that that is probably good. So that looks good to me. And then the other couple things are, I love all of this. And these switches and outlets kind of detract from all this. So what I would do just kind of right off the bat is take those out with this little like clone stamp tool. And that's a super easy thing to do. This one over here would probably take a little bit more time. I'm not going to dive into doing that like perfectly. Obviously, like this needs to be fixed. Okay, so it's not perfect, but it's better. You get the idea. Now, what I'm thinking. So normally for wedding stuff, people usually edit pretty warm. It just kind of helps people to remember things a little bit more fondly. And rather than having like a super cool image, and like, I don't really see any wedding photographers edit like this. The first thing I would just kind of nail down is the white balance. So I think I like it a little bit warmer, and I like my photos green to the greenish tint, but I think I like that as is. Now, exposure wise, I'm gonna bring up the exposure. What I look for in exposure is her skin tones, where are her skin tones at as far as the exposure that I want. I want to keep it true to what I remember it being, and also I want to just enhance. I don't want to really kind of change the nature and the character of a photo too much. So I think that proper exposure would probably be about right there. These highlights are pretty bright, so let's just see what it looks like if I bring this down quite a bit. And I think that makes them a little less distracting, but I kind of like to bring up the whites just to keep that like contrasty pop in there. So now from here, I think that this looks okay. I think I might raise the shadows just a little bit. And sometimes if you don't know or aren't sure, it just kind of helps to just like slide it around and see what the effect is. So I think that I'm okay with that right there. I usually don't mess with texture or clarity. If anything, I can bring clarity down, and vibrance and saturation I'm gonna leave right now. So next thing is tone curve. This is kind of where a lot of the magic happens a little bit. So simple S curve here kind of helps to bring that pop. So you can see before and after. Kind of like that already. This tone curve, I think, is something that you could preserve for the majority of your images. If you set a tone curve and you like it, then you can potentially leave that and not really have to edit that once you've set it. So you can come back up here and kind of account for, okay, maybe I think that there's not enough black, so I can bring the blacks down a little bit, make it more contrasty, or I can bring the blacks up and make it less contrasty. So tone curve, you can pretty much set it and then forget it once you feel like you have a area or a setting that you like. Going into each channel, you can kind of mess with that as well. Say that I want a little bit more cyan in the shadows. I can bring this down, and I can either leave this like this, or I can bring it up to balance out, bring some reds in the highlights. I don't like that at all. I don't mind the cyan, to be honest with you. That was before, and this is with the cyan. So that's not too bad, but you can kind of mess around with this, especially based off of like where skin tones are at. The other thing that you can do is take this little slider. If you go, it'll show you the values on the actual tone curve. So I'm gonna kind of leave that like that for now. I think I might actually even reset this. Let's just delete. So next, this HSL color panel is kind of a set it and forget it. For the most part, the ones that you will have to edit will be red, orange, and sometimes yellow, just because red and orange are skin tones. Those are what is most going to affect skin tones. So I like my skin tones to be a little bit brighter. And where she's at right now, I think is good as far as like color. Sometimes skin tones can be too red, and then you need to bring them to the more like orangish red side. And sometimes they can be too orange and you need to bring them down a little bit. I actually don't mind that. So before I go any further, I'm gonna go all the way down and we're gonna go to this calibration. This kind of like stylizes an image. So if I mess with this, you can see that the colors change pretty drastically. And so I don't really have a set formula for this. I just kind of like to mess with it and then see where it takes me. So as far as an image, I think I kind of like this. I tend to like my images a little bit desaturated, and that's not too bad. If you're ever wondering how to get the orange teal look, this is how you do it. Just drag this blue primary all the way down. So I don't mind that. So if I reset this, not close it. So it's a small change in there. And then if I go back up to the HSL, now I can start to edit individual colors. So maybe the orange in the stairs is too much, and I want to bring that down, but that brings down the skin tones as well. That's something you have to kind of account for. So I'm going to leave the orange, I think, at -10. The yellows, let's just kind of play with that a little bit. I want to bring down the yellows a little bit. Greens, a way to get those kind of, there's not a whole lot of green in this image other than in her bouquet, but To get that kind of deep green, you take the luminance down and the saturation down, and you can potentially even bring the hue up towards blue as well. I think I'll bring the green down a little bit more. There's not really a lot of blue in this scene, and I think I want to just go with that. So I'm just going to take all the blue out for the most part. So there is a little bit of blue in her veil, and I kind of like it just a little bit brighter. It's kind of a cool look. So you can use the HSL panel to kind of like selectively edit different colors, and you can even add luminance and subtract luminance, so darken or lighten them. Purple and magenta don't really affect a whole ton, and there's usually not a lot in images, so I think that that is okay for right now. I'm gonna just duplicate this and then reset. Let's just reset the crop just so that we have a template for where we were. So that's before, and this is after so far where we're at. Now, looking at this, I feel like I do want to come a little bit darker and then potentially bring up the contrast a little bit. I like that. I'm gonna come down to this tone curve. Now I'm starting to stylize this image. And you see that there's these bright whites here. I like the muted highlights. It's more of kind of like a film look. So I'm gonna bring this down a little bit. And you can see that that kind of makes it look a little bit weird. Easy way that I found to fix that is to just make sure that this point is anchored to the line, if not maybe above it a little bit. And now I definitely get more of that muted look from here to here. I don't think I want the shadows up. Well, yeah, I think I'm okay with that. Let's kind of mess. So I will come back to these and kind of mess around based on where the image is at after my edits. I do think it's actually a little bit too sharp, so I want to bring down clarity just a little bit to give it kind of a little bit of a glow. Just see what that looks like. Yeah, I do think I like that a little bit more. Okay, so that's a little bit closer to where I want. Now, coming back down to this color grading, I have the shadows and the highlights were typically where it was at before they changed this. Now you have mid-tone control as well, which is nice. So I'm gonna bring this up. If I wanna warm this image up, let's bring the shadows up to this like yellow-orange kind of vibe. That's not too bad. I think maybe something like right there. And I don't know if I would bring up the highlights. Let's try like a complementary color. So if I bring the blue into this a little bit, now if I turn off and on, that's before and this is after. So kind of subtle, but I don't mind that. I kind of like that a lot. So I think I'll leave that right there as is. The one thing that I do want to do is I want to bring up these midtones a little bit more. Yep. Okay, so now where we're at compared to where we started. So this is where we're currently at, and this is where we started at. Definitely kind of like this vibe. I think I almost might be happy with this. So you can see I definitely brought in a little bit more style with the color grading. It just kind of finishes off an image. You don't have to use it all the time, but it is kind of where you can bring in a little bit more style, a little bit more filmic look. Sharpening, I usually leave. Maybe I'll bring it up a little bit, just typically to like the third notch, especially for people I don't like to over sharpen too much. I will do the enable profile corrections, and you can see that totally changes this. So that being done, now I can bring this exposure down quite a bit to there, and I actually really like that a lot. It straightened out the corners and also the vignette. So that's before with and without. So that's without and that's with. So it just depends on which kind of look. I'd rather be able to control my vignette, so I like to enable it and then bring the vignetting back in. So I think I like that right there. So I'm gonna go to this brush, and then I like to set it to +10 or 0.10, contrast -10, and shadows up to +10. And this is for me where I do like selective. So if I zoom in here, I can just kind of paint over her skin here and brighten it up just a little bit. I want it to look natural. I don't want it to look fake. So if I zoom back out, and if I toggle on and off, this is before that adjustment, this is after. And if it's too much, then I can just return the exposure to normal and then leave it at that. So I like that. Now I can even bring the exposure down a little bit more, make it a little bit more moody. And I'm really kind of digging where this is at now. I think that I would call this done. I want to see what it looks like if I raise this back up. Yeah, that's not too bad. I think I can't make up my mind about this. So if it's a little bit too much, then I can again bring the shadows down. I think that that's probably good right there. All right, so this is potentially finished. We've gone through color grading, we've gone through detail, we've gone through the lens corrections. Transform I don't really ever use unless it's for like real estate. Grain, you can add some grain if you're gonna post this to Instagram, just to kind of give it more of like a film look. Usually I kind of like the default settings and I'll bring it up to like say 25 as far as the amount and kind of leave it there. So that's what the grain, you can definitely see it in the sides and then in the corners here. And if you don't like it, then you don't have to. I like a little bit, so I think I might go like 15. For printing though, I won't. I'll take the grain out of it just because I like the texture that prints have by themselves. And that's it. So that's this edit done. And what I'll do is I'll export this preset so that way you all can have it because I mean, you've seen the adjustments that I made. You got a little bit of what goes on in my head about how I do this and how it comes to be this way. So this is the original image and this is our final, which I'm kind of digging a little bit. And I always do this. A good note is to, once you think that you are good with an edit, if you have the time, walk away from it, go do something, go like relax for an hour or two, and then come back to it. I guarantee you that you will come back to it with fresh eyes and you will see that, okay, maybe I want to make this minor adjustment here, or I don't like this as much. So for me, even just kind of looking away and then looking back, I think I want to bring up the whites a little bit more. And that is what I want. I wanted to kind of bring in this nice glow and still have this like white pop in there, this contrasty pop. So yeah, I hope that that helps you guys. Again, if you want to support me and purchase my own presets, then there's a link down in the description. I will leave a link to download this as well down there for free. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. And my name is David Roscoe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Pretty soon we're going to be able to do mentor sessions. Can you imagine? We could sell preset pack after preset pack and only adjust the contrast slider and the tone curve. Dude, we're going to be rolling in the dough pretty soon.
No one's going to take you seriously after this. It's all downhill from here.